humidity won't melt, right?
That too, exactly. I'm so excited. That arrives around Thursday into Friday, so
And with the breezy too, my one piece of advice, make sure of your Halloween decor, maybe nail that down.
That's a great idea.
To the ground.
Yes, for this weekend.
Well, thanks so much for joining us here on Wink.
Our next newscast is an hour away on CBS, and stick around for Wink Tracks the Tropics right after this.
This is Wink Tracks the Tropics, powered by the Weather Authority.
When the tropics are active, timing is everything. The Weather Authority is keeping you prepared.
The latest update did come in from the National Hurricane Center. Helene moving north-northeast. Winds have increased up to 90 miles per hour.
Keeping you informed.
It's now 170 miles northwest of us, and as we had mentioned, this is a major Cat 4 hurricane. This is going to have major landfall implications.
Southwest Florida has seen its fair share of storms in the past few years.
We are leaving immediately after this because it is not safe. You're starting to see some of these debris, sticks flying up and out, and it's one of the reasons why Sanibel is evacuated. It clearly is not safe out here.
But our slice of paradise has bounced back in ways we'd never expect.
It was tough.
We had each other, and that's a good thing.
I wouldn't have made it without Marianne. We're going to make it, though. We're going to make it.
Wink News has been there with you every step of the way, and that won't change.
Yes, we avoid the worst part of the storm, but the wind field's growing and the pressures are deepening. We're going to feel more of that influence on the back end with the surge.
From forecast cones to important safety reminders, the Weather Authority has you covered. You're watching Wink Tracks the Tropics.
Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to Wink Tracks the Tropics. I'm Wink's Weather Authority Val Simpson and Melissa, still churning in the Caribbean. We're going to talk about who's going to see the worst impacts now that it could potentially become a Cat 4 hurricane. And of course, to talk about this, we're going to punch in our panel. Let's say hello to everybody. Who do we have on today? What's up, guys? How's everyone doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. One day closer to the weekend.
That's right.
And I know that we're going to be enjoying some nicer conditions, some lower dew points.
Yes,
we
eventually.
are. It'll feel nice out there next couple of days.
Yes.
So if you can, take advantage of it.
Yes, exactly. A little breezy conditions too, right here locally.
Yeah, definitely. Tomorrow, Saturday, you'll be feeling that for sure. If you're planning on going out in the water, you might want to think twice. Might be a little bumpy out there, but otherwise, I think it's going to be nice.
Yeah, and Liz just mentioned, she was like, nail down your Halloween decorations. That's a great idea, you know? Make sure that they're not flying away in the breeze. It's not going to be anything intense, but, you know, 25 miles per hour might take your little skeleton away.
You don't want your 7-foot-tall pumpkin floating down the street, do you?
No, exactly. No inflatables. Keep the inflatables.
Oh, we have
nailed
inflatable.
down.
Yeah, exactly. So we might need to put those away. Guys, let's go ahead. I'm going to do a little recap of what's going on right now in the Caribbean since we did get the 11 o'clock advisory from the National Hurricane Center. So, and after that, I'll bring you guys back in. All right, here is what we're seeing right now. This is a satellite view of Melissa, as you can see. I want to mention that there are hurricane watches in effect currently for portions of Haiti and Jamaica as well. And there's also a tropical storm warning in Jamaica, obviously, because of these conditions. One of the things that we've been noticing and we've been talking about in the last couple of days is how slow moving this system is. What is that equal to? Just downpours of rain in the same location, unfortunately, for these folks in these areas. One of the things that we noticed with this latest advisory is that the winds have dropped from 50 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour. That means that it's a slower system. What this indicates, and we were talking about this off camera with Josh, is that because it's slowing down, it's more likely now that it's going to continue to meander to the west. Almost what the European has been saying for a while now. It's going to do that first, and then there's a possibility that it will continue curve northern, and that might be over Jamaica, around Jamaica, coasting it, very close to it, as you can see. But in terms of the movement speed, it's still pretty much almost stagnant, okay? At 2 miles per hour, I think human beings walk faster than what the system is moving, and that is because there's no steering, no natural steering for this, for Melissa to go anywhere. Another interesting fact about Melissa is the cone. I'm going to point out here a couple of things. We can see that by tomorrow, it's still going to be a tropical storm. It's going to gain strength on Saturday, becoming a Cat 1 hurricane. On Sunday, looking to become a major hurricane at that point. And of course, National Hurricane Center now saying that the potential of becoming a Cat 4 hurricane is there. And we have been talking about that. We have been talking about the intensity in the last few episodes here. Now, one of the things that we're also noticing is that there is a little bit more agreement in between the models. So I want to show you guys the spaghetti models here. Notice how they're coming closer together, except for that one outlier moving further west or closer to Central America. But most of the models, and this is what we look for, because this what actually does is increases the chances that we would see this taking place, is when all the models are headed into one direction. And even though some of them, most of them for the next couple of days continue to keep it in that main area, then they kind of do, there's a little bit of uncertainty there in terms of, do they coast portions of Haiti? Do they move closer to Jamaica? The question lies there later on in the week. And I think that we used this graphic yesterday. I want to bring it up again because obviously when we talk about models, the two that we really focus on are always the GFS and the American model, the two biggest models. The GFS here represented in blue, the Euro represented in red. Right now, most of them in agreement, like I showed you with the spaghetti models, but look at what happens as the day progresses. I have a stop here. This would be Sunday morning, Sunday afternoonish. You notice now how the Euro starts kind of coasting more Jamaica towards the west of Jamaica. However, the American model takes that turn northward into what is Haiti, or the peninsula of Haiti, southern Haiti there. And then you can notice there's, more distance in between them as the day progresses on Sunday. Now into Monday, it's already trying to pass Hispaniola. Meanwhile, you could see that the Euro is kind of still meandering there in the Caribbean, the very warm. We're talking about above average sea surface temperatures here, not to mention the ocean heat content as well. Now here's when, at the beginning of the week, we're talking about Tuesday, is when we see the Euro kind of moving very close or right on top of what's Jamaica. Meanwhile, the American already up into the Atlantic. Now here's what could potentially happen. We could see that movement over Cuba, and we did see that with the spaghetti models too. Eastern Cuba is what could potentially happen if this plays out, if it continues to slow down and continues to move west. So this is still what we are looking for, what we're keeping an eye on to be able to forecast better as we get closer to the event. Now, when we talk about one of the major impacts that we are going to see, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the episode, one of the major impacts that we're going to see with the storm is going to be rain. The fact that it's almost stagnant, this means days and days and days of rain total accumulation. And we have seen a change and an increase in those numbers as well. We're talking about areas, for instance, in Haiti, Dominican Republic, in orange, Jamaica too, showing signs that we could see about a foot of rain in these areas, not to mention everything that's in yellow. And then again, this is just the forecast. Keep that in mind. As this continues to move, this could get even worse if it continues to move west. For Jamaica, for instance, it could even be more than a foot of rain in that fact. So we have to continue to watch this. One of the things that if it does continue to slow, as we've been seeing, and it continues to meander west, notice here the ocean heat content is that all that available energy that is not just in the surface, but below this area in the Caribbean. Now, usually hurricanes, what happens is they start churning cooler waters, and that actually helps to decrease in the strength or intensity of a system. However, as this continues to move west, it's going to encounter even more energy from the ocean heat content, and not to mention less shear. Right now, it's been battling a little bit of shear. While we were looking at that satellite, you could actually notice that it doesn't have a perfect, it's not a perfect looking system, and that is the reason why, and that is why also it's likely that it lost a little bit of those wind speeds. Now here is the model intensity guidance. We've been watching this every day very closely. If you look at the bottom, it tells you the different hours. When you go to 72, that's about 3 days or so. Notice how a lot of the models are in agreement that it strengthened to a possibly Category 3 hurricane right there. Some models also agreeing that it could be the Cat 4 that the National Hurricane Center is also pointing to. So in terms of, intensity-wise, we're looking at a major hurricane here, potentially, if it continues to do what it's doing so far. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and punch in the panel right here. Guys, let's talk about a little bit about what the current conditions are of Melissa, because I did mention that we are seeing a little bit of shear. It did slow down a little bit. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely battling some shear. It was yesterday too. It kind of tilted its center. Things were looking a little messy there yesterday, and it's still looking a little messy today. Now, we did notice, like you said, the wind speeds are down about 5 miles per hour, but unfortunately, if it stays weaker now, it does mean that there is a chance that it could get stronger, even stronger later. It kind of increases that likelihood. And as you can see, there are some watches and warnings out there. Jamaica's under a tropical storm warning in addition to a hurricane watch. And then we've also got that Tiburon Peninsula of Haiti under a hurricane watch as well. So definitely something to keep an eye on for our friends in the Caribbean. Of course, they're already dealing with some of that rain just in the outer bands of what is Melissa right now.
Yeah, Oceana made a good point about how the storm is tilted right now. Like, what does that mean? Well, it's battling wind shear in the vertical. So it's not exactly winds at the same level that are moving different speeds and directions. It's winds from top to bottom that are moving at different speeds, right? And that's kind of tilting our storm, kind of like the Leaning Tower of Pisa almost. So it's kind of like built like a cake. You got the lower level, you have the mid-level, and you have the upper level of the storm. Each of those levels need to be aligned in order for the tropical storm or hurricane to become better organized and become stronger, right? So right now, it's dealing with a lot of the vertical wind shear. It's tilting the storm. Therefore, you're seeing it's actually weakened a little bit over the past 24 hours with those sustained winds down to 45. Now, that westerly vertical wind shear is decreasing, and it will continue to do so over the next day or two. Once we get all of those different levels aligned, all of a sudden you're going to see this thing start to spin up and gain a lot of strength very quickly and take advantage of all of that warm, deep, open ocean water, just like Val mentioned earlier. So I think that's a trend that we're going to start to see probably once we get towards tomorrow. And all of a sudden, that rapid intensification is going to take over. You're going to check in with us probably tomorrow. It might still be a tropical storm. All of a sudden, on Monday, this thing has a real possibility of being a Cat 4. I think my biggest concern at this point right now, just based on the current forecast track, it's going to be our friends in Jamaica, right? They're going to get really close to the center of the storm, likely for a long time. So not only, are they going to be battling winds of a major hurricane likely, they're also going to be getting inches upon inches of rainfall due to a slow-moving, at some points, stagnant storm. All right, so unfortunately, that looks to be the brunt of it. And again, you see that track with those spaghetti models eventually curving it off towards the north and east fairly quickly. I know Val's going to talk a little bit more about why that is. So, once it's kind of done interacting with Jamaica, once we get towards the early middle part of next week, that's when it starts to jet off towards the north, whether that is eastern Cuba or maybe tries to stay in between eastern Cuba and Haiti. That is remaining to be seen. But again, in terms of us in southwest Florida, you know, I'll let Val explain a little bit more about those steering patterns that are definitely on our side.
I wanted to point that out because we have a front headed our way, and this is the front that is going to be protecting Florida. I know that we've been talking about it in our last episodes, but it's very important to reiterate that because not only is it going to be protecting us here in Florida, Southwest Florida, it's also going to be steering this possible system to be well off the coast of the United States. And I am going to punch that in right now because I know that we have this really nice graphic that really represents that with this front coming in that will also be bringing us some dry air. And maybe the front is not going to be pushing down. I don't see it here. Let me see, wrong graphic, guys, but you get the point. What I'm trying to say is that we'll have this, I think this one is it. Let me put, doesn't want to bring my, okay, it doesn't want to bring my front down. But all this to say is that we do have this front that's going to be pushing down, that is going to protecting the state of Florida, and that is also going to be steering this to the east. Oh, look at Jonathan. This shot is amazing. Look at us three right here. We were talking about it before we went on air. He was like, let me see if I can jump into the 3 shot. Guys, so basically that's the one thing that I wanted us to really hit on, the fact that, you know, even though it's going to be intensifying and strengthening into a Cat 4 hurricane, and it's going to be doing so very close to Florida, it's not something that we need to worry about here because of this front that will be helping us with that steering, correct?
Yeah, 100%. And Josh showed a great graphic this morning. I know the one you were trying to pull up, Val, and it's all has to do with that front. The jet stream's going to make that really big dip into the southeast, and that is going to have a trough associated with it, and it's also going to carry Melissa far away from us. And we talked about this yesterday, but once that trough gets a hold of Melissa, we'll start to see that forward movement really start to increase. And that's not going to be until next week, more so like Tuesday into Wednesday. But what that is that jet stream is very fast moving air in the upper atmosphere, and that's going to grab Melissa and steer it out. There's a good graphic. That's a good one. And that's going to follow it way out into the Atlantic. But before we get there, again, this is, yeah, we aren't too worried about it for us here in Florida, but this could be a very, very dangerous storm for the Caribbean islands. So this is not something that we should take lightly in any form, just for those islands. There's so many people that live there. You know, they don't have, a lot of those areas don't have amazing preparation. That stuff that we have are some of our really high-tech stuff. So this is something that they should absolutely be preparing for right now, especially Jamaica, like Josh said. This storm could go east, west, or right over it, but regardless, it's going to be very close. And heavy rain there could lead to some detrimental flooding, and it's just not a very good scenario right now for the Caribbean.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that. Let's talk about the flooding that could occur, because we mentioned it again also a couple of days ago and yesterday about the terrain that is located in these areas. Josh?
Yeah, we can talk about flooding too, absolutely. You know, a good point about that is a lot of this terrain is mountainous sometimes, especially the Dominican Republic, which may not be in the forecast cone, but likely still going to get a lot of rain. Haiti as well. You have to think, how do you get rain in the first place? Air is rising, right? It rises, it condenses, and all of a sudden, rain falls from the sky. What's going to happen is you have these rain bands that are going to be pushing in from the south towards the north. They're going to run into the mountains there, southern Haiti, southern Dominican as well. All of a sudden, not only do you have the rain that's already there, the air, once it meets the mountain, is going to rise, right? It's going to push up the mountain, and then all of a sudden, it's creating even more rain. So that's a big issue there when you talk about mountainous terrain. Now, when it comes to some of the rainfall totals for Jamaica, I mean, this particular graphic doesn't even go out far enough to account for where the storm is going to be by the time we get to the first half of next week. At that point, again, like Oceana mentioned, you know, about 5 to 6 days out is kind of like where the biggest spread in the models is right now. Whether it decides to go slide to the south of Jamaica, slide right over it, or even perhaps slide to the north. All three possibilities are still on the table right now. Regardless, all of those are going to dump a lot of rain for Jamaica. And again, the closer that the core of the storm gets to the country, to the island, the worse those wind impacts are going to be. And because it is a slow-moving system, you have pretty much just everything working against the island country there. So that's why the concern meter is the highest for them. And then, you know, once it starts to make its way a little bit further north and pulls, let's say, into eastern Cuba, that trough that Oceana mentioned is going to make it move quadruple time, all right? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if by like Thursday, Friday, this thing's pulling maybe 30 miles an hour off towards the north. So in terms of rainfall, that's what we have on tap.
Yeah. Potentially, yeah. I mean, they've been, you know, we've been reading the forecast as saying catastrophic rainfall totals. We're looking at, you know, so much rain that it could create flash floods, also landslides, which are incredibly dangerous, especially because of these mountainous terrains that we were talking about again. But I think that definitely the biggest concern for Jamaica, and you do make a great point, because this graphic just, I think it goes out in the next 5 days or so, but it doesn't necessarily, you know, and we still have a long way to go other than that. So this is going to be a lot of rain for this area, especially for Jamaica. We did notice Cuba probably getting some of those outer bands, especially, we don't know again what's going to happen. Some models are saying that it's going to go right through eastern Cuba. And, you know, we'll see at what intensity and strength that's going to happen when that time comes. And also, we don't see it on here, but potentially even Puerto Rico also getting some of those outer bands, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it just kind of goes to show that the first, you know, the short term of this forecast is the part that's more uncertain than the long term, right? Lucky for us here in Florida, it's like we know what's coming. We know we have that big front, that big trough. It's got like a U shape to it. So imagine like this is the storm. Once that trough runs into it, it's going to push it, and then it's going to suck it off towards the north. So I mean, like that part is set in stone. We know that's going to happen, which makes the long term easier. But the short term, when you have a storm that's moving so slowly like this one with the lack of steering currents, again, any little change right now will make a big difference in that track that occurs about 5 to 6 days in the future, which plays a big role for, again, places like Jamaica and like eastern Cuba.
I do want to point out, guys, did you notice this too? One of the trends this morning with the euro, it's trending a little bit more towards the east than what it was doing yesterday, for example. I don't know if you noticed that too, but I mean, we are going to see this actually, it's going to be like a windshield wiper until we get closer to the event. Isn't that probably likely?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked super deep into it today, into the euro specifically, but I do know that the past few days it was an outlier, and there was a lot of models, especially that Google model, the Google AI model, that was kind of in between where the euro was and where it is starting to go now. So I think the euro is kind of following that trend, kind of going a little, I think it was a little overdoing it at first with that westward trend, and now it's kind of taking that back and being like, hey, I don't think it's going to go that far west. Things are looking a little more likely that this will get picked up a little bit sooner, like very slightly sooner. And it's not going to go as far west as it thought. So, you know, that's the thing. Like Josh said, it's so true. The fact that the short term is harder to predict right now than the long term says a lot about this storm.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, again, with the track that we're seeing, another thing that we've been talking about, because it is very curious, it doesn't necessarily look like a cone. We have here, in fact, a balloon effect because of the slow movement that we are seeing with this storm. A lot of folks, you know, wondering, what is this? Why does it look like that, guys?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all got to do with the forward speed, right? It's a slow-moving system, so that's why this cone looks really shrunk up. And we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but that forecast cone, it's actually kind of the same every time when it comes to the size of it, right? So what they do is there's like 5 different days, right? In each of those days, they put a circle. 2/3 of the time, historically, the center of the storm will stay within that circle. Now, obviously, 1 day out is going to be a more accurate forecast than 5 days out. Therefore, the circle is the smallest for the day 1 forecast, and it slowly grows as you get up to day 5. So if you think about it, with a storm that's moving at a normal pace, let's say at like 10 miles an hour, that creates a nice cone because you start with the smallest circle, they start to get larger, and all of a sudden you have the end of the cone. That's what you're looking at right now, but just imagine if you shrunk it together, pressed it together with 2 of your hands just because of how slow it's moving. Now, when you start to look at this forecast cone, I would say when you wake up on Saturday, you'll start to notice it's going to look more like a cone because 5 days out from Saturday will be Wednesday into Thursday, and at that point it'll start to pick up speed. So until then, you're going to continue to see this kind of deranged Christmas ornament looking thing.
Yeah, it does look like a Christmas ornament, and you're already stressing me out because we haven't even started with Halloween yet, and I'm already thinking about, oh, I have to buy presents.
You got
I
time,
know.
Val, don't
there
worry.
was a story yesterday that we did about Starbucks cups coming out in the red color. I was like, oh,
I feel like we just got pumpkin spice.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I love the fall drink so much. I think I'm more of into, this is so off topic. I'm definitely more into the fall drinks than I am into the Christmas drink. Yeah. But I know, things are flying. It
We
does look
appreciate
like
the
a Christmas
insight.
ornament.
Too soon for the fall drinks. Guys, for the Christmas drinks. We are right now live on YouTube and our Facebook page. If you want to leave us a comment or have a question for us, let us know. For our group of Mets, we're here for you. We can answer anything that might be on your mind right now in regards to Melissa. But I want to take things a little bit more local because I noticed that in the last few days we've been waking up to tons of fog. And it's been, quite interesting because I know that you've been covering also Oceana traffic, and you've noticed that it has caused a couple of extra accidents, more than usual.
Yeah.
But I do want to go ahead and punch here. Josh, you do have a picture for us?
Yeah, we do. Our amazing
weather
weather watchers are always a big help. They have been the past few days, and today was no exception. Check out this picture sent to us. This is Burnt Store Meadows in and around Punta Gorda. Joellen sent this in early this morning. Charlotte County has been the big winners or losers, if you want to consider that. And when it comes to that dense fog the past few mornings, today was no exception there. And we love these pictures because, it doesn't matter whether it's a nice sunrise, whether, it's a thunderstorm that we can tell where it is, what it looks like, where it's moving, or even if it's fog, right? If we can get at a ground level and know exactly which neighborhoods are seeing the fog, it helps us out tremendously. So a big shout out to Joellen and a few more of our weather watchers the past few days that have been sending in those pictures of that dense fog.
Yes, and this is a reminder that, this is what it looked like also. I was driving on Palm Beach Boulevard trying to come to the station this morning, and I have a picture very similar to this with all that fog out there.
I would have showed it, Val. You didn't send it.
Don't kill me. But this is a great reminder to tell you guys that if you haven't become a weather watcher, a Wink weather watcher yet, you can do so by going to our website, winknews.com. You can find this link, fill out and complete the form. It will have you sign a release and then also give you a exclusive access to our Facebook private group. All right, very well. I know that Oceana hurricane tips as we continue, because hurricane season is not over yet. We still have a few days to go. It ends on November 30th, just to remind everybody. The good news on that, I do want to make a note, is that there is no tropical development expected for the next 7 days out in the Atlantic Basin. We're not watching anything else either. So, but I know that, we still have to keep an eye on things because, we're not done just yet. Do you have anything for us today?
So I could give you another hurricane tip today, but I do want to bring up something about rapid intensification, because we've been mentioning that Melissa could undergo rapid intensification this weekend. So it's been moving pretty slow, not much has changed in the past few days, but come Saturday, like Josh mentioned earlier, that's when you're going to wake up and that's when we're likely going to see a change. And so rapid intensification was when a storm increases wind speeds 35 miles per hour or more in 24 hours. So that's a lot, and we're actually expecting it to not only rapidly intensify into a major hurricane, but even a Category 4, which of course is still a major hurricane, but that's up there in the scale. So this weekend we could see a lot of that, and like he also said earlier, Monday, it's going to be a whole different story with this storm compared to what we're likely going to be talking about tomorrow. Not for us, but out there in the Caribbean, it's going to be lurking out there. And I have a hurricane prep tip for you every day usually, but I was a little busy today to think of something unique.
It's true.
I'm sorry.
But I do love that because that is very important. We talked about it even yesterday because we said, is it out of the question to think that we could potentially see a Cat 5 hurricane? And I know that we were going back and forth. Josh, you were like, it's not out of the question. That could potentially be a possibility.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is. does depend on that track though, right? Because it needs to take more of a westward route and a westward jog because it needs to get into those more open ocean waters. If it stays a little bit too close to Jamaica or even passes to the north of it, that becomes a little bit less likely. So the possibility is still absolutely there. I'm glad Oceana mentioned rapid intensification because you probably heard us say that word a couple times the past few days. You're probably going to hear it a lot more in the next few days, especially as you head towards this weekend, just because this storm is going to strengthen so quickly in a very short period of time. And, you know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure every major hurricane that we've had so far this season has undergone a period of rapid intensification. So, you know, if this one does pan out, that's just another one to add to the list.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. That's true. Anything that actually was able to strengthen into a hurricane strength, had hurricane winds, ended up going through rapid intensification. I would like to, I'm going to work on that for tomorrow because I would like to share what we've seen so far and the steering that we've seen so far this season. So, yeah, you're going to want to tune in tomorrow at 11 because we're going to have that for you. Guys, we're running out of time here, but I want to know what your takeaways were for this episode.
I say this like every time, but a cold front is on its way next week, and that is going to be our shield from this storm. So we can thank that for many reasons, not only for some relief for Halloween, you know, those long-sleeved costumes. I remember being a kid and having a very itchy and long-sleeve costume, and if it was hot, I was miserable. So hopefully we can avoid that this Halloween with our highs. I mean, you've probably seen it all day, but if you haven't, I'll have it for you at noon. But our 7-day forecast, those highs are looking like the upper 70s. Like, I can't even explain how excited I am.
That's going to be very refreshing. I'm looking forward to it. I know my kids are too, because they're going to be wearing some very thick, furry stuff. Yeah, and I let them pick what they want, and it's kind of like, oh boy, that's a lot of cloth right there to be wearing on an October night. But yeah, hopefully it won't be too bad. Josh, any takeaways?
Yeah, again, you know, just stick with us. Again, this thing's not going to move a whole lot over the next few days. We're going to sound repetitive. If there's one thing I just want you to keep in mind, that front is coming, and it is going to help create that barrier. So again, our concern meter is still nice and low. If there are any crazy changes that are highly unlikely to happen, of course, we'll be the first ones to let you know.
So how do we want to end this? Florida is what?
Hakuna Matata.
There you go.
All is well.
Yeah.
Hakuna Matata.
But, you know, Jamaica, those Caribbean islands, of course, we're going to be thinking about that. We're going to be tracking this closely, especially for those that live there and are traveling there even.
So true, so true. Definitely keeping in mind for the people that are traveling there as well, yes. All right, thank you guys so much for joining me today for my panel, and thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you tomorrow at 11 o'clock. Bye.